Being 7 o'clock, I'll call the Marathon County Board of Supervisors to order, please. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing. Following the Pledge of Allegiance will be a silent moment of reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will have the reading of the notice, please.
An educational meeting of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors will be held at the Marathon County Courthouse Assembly Room, 500 Forest Street in the city of Wausau at 7 p.m. on Thursday, September 21st, and the agenda was duly signed and posted.
Thank you. I would like to have everyone please silence your cell phones and any other electronic devices that you have as to not to be an interruption to the meeting, and I thank you for your compliance. And we'll move on to roll call, and I'd ask the supervisors to all sign in, please. And thank you. I'd like to welcome all of the visitors that we have here with us this evening, and especially we even have visitors in our overflow courtroom B. I know there is some of the individuals that have signed up for public comment in courtroom B, and I will try to give you a little bit of a heads up. I will read the next person that is is signed up, and also provide the person that would be in the next individual after the persons that is speaking. And with that, we will go to public comment. But prior to that, I would like to, we'll now move into the public comment. And before taking comment, I want to remind the audience and our interested commenters about the rules related to public comment. Marathon County Board has created a rule and expectation that public comment is permitted at our educational meeting. Although a public comment period is not legally required, the board has found that public input into the business being considered by the board is vital. To ensure that public comment period creates a forum where commenters are able to provide their comments in a safe, productive manner, I want to share with you the rules of expectations associated with the comment period. First, our county board rules allow public comments at this educational meeting only if the comments pertain to an item on the agenda. If you wish to make public comment, if you wish to make public comment, your comment must pertain to one of the items on tonight's agenda. If your comment strays from that topic, I may ask you to explain how your comments are related to the agenda item or direct you to relate your comments to one of the agenda items. Second, please address all your comments to me, the chair, and not to the audience and any particular member of the body. Directing your comments to the chair is an important rule of decorum. It helps to ensure that comments are to not become personal or offensive. If a comment does create a personal attack, I will direct you to end your comment and move on to the next speaker. Our board rules require you to announce your name and municipality of residence before commenting. I may remind you of that, not to interrupt. Is not my intention to interrupt you or your comment, but simply to be consistent with our rules. Tonight, we have 19, the number of people signed up for public comment. While our board rules creates a 15-minute public comment period, it also extends to the chair the discretion to apportion and extend time according to the number of persons wishing to speak. In order to give every person an opportunity to address the board, I will be apportioning 3 minutes to each speaker. If a previous commenter has made a comment that you agree with, you are welcome to simply indicate your agreement with the previous speaker. I do ask the audience to refrain from responding directly to a commenter or from applauding or voicing a reaction to a particular commenter or comment. In addition to preserving civility in the room, this will also allow us to keep the business of the board on a timely manner. Again, this public comment period is an opportunity for the public to provide its input on an item before the board. If our rules, particular rules of decorum or civility, are violated, I will ask the commenter or the audience to conform to these rules. If rules are continuously violated, I may declare a particular commenter's comment period ended or the public comment period as a whole to be over or recess the meeting. I am confident that our public commenters will make their comments in a civil and respectful manner and will direct their comments to me and provide a valuable input as to our county business, and that our audience will maintain its attention, civility, and decorum to allow this board to conduct its scheduled business. Thank you for complying with that. Susan Haneke is our first speaker, and followed by Voigt Smith. Voigt Smith.
Hello, my name is Sue Haneke, and I live in the city of Wausau, and I appreciate the opportunity to have my voice heard this evening. I consider myself a COVID casualty, not in the sense of what you may be thinking, but rather a statistic due to government overreach on our individual rights. In 2021, I was let go from United Health Group, where I had invested almost 25 years of my life. I worked my way up in the company, and more often than not, had stellar performance appraisals and rave reviews from both clients and brokers. None of these factors were taken into account when United Health Group succumbed to the mass hysteria the government inflicted on the American people with this COVID narrative. I was granted a religious exemption, but then was fired because, with the excuse, if they kept me on, I would create an undue hardship on my unit. Ironically enough, during the COVID craze, United Health Group was and is currently led by an individual named by Andrew Witte. He was once president of GlaxoSmithKline, but announced he was stepping down due to allegations of not doing a very good job. In 2018, Witte became CEO of Optum, which is a division of United Health Group. In 2019, he was named president of United Health, in addition to his role as CEO of Optum. In 2020, Sir Andrew Witte took an absence from Optum to assist the World Health Organization in the development of a vaccine for COVID-19. He became the CEO of United Health Group in February of 2021. There's no conflict of interest here. I am in full support of the No More Mandates initiative. This madness needs to stop immediately. Lives like mine have been forever altered, not only emotionally, but financially. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Voigt Smith, next followed by Christy Schweiss, excuse me.
Hello, I'm Dr. Voigt Smith. I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to speak. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I am not a medical doctor. I'm also an officer veteran of the United States Air Force, and I took an oath to defend the Constitution. I'm here because our health, our well-being, our freedom are in jeopardy. In that spirit, I fully support the resolution in opposition to the COVID-19 mandates. I also support the statement of the Association of the American Physicians and Surgeons urging against the return of these, quote, ineffective and unethical mandate policies. Regarding mask mandates, masks do not prevent the spread of respiratory viruses. They cause harm, and mask mandates violate informed consent. A recent Cochrane systemic review supports that there's a total lack of evidence for previous mandates, and the AAPS cites over 60 studies showing the potential harm of imposing these mandates on individuals. Regarding the COVID vaccine mandates, there was never any legitimate research showing safety or efficacy for these mandated jabs. There was also a huge international campaign of deception led by the World Healthcare Organization, big pharma, medical journals, big tech, government healthcare agencies, schools, hospitals, the mainstream media, and other organizations. Also, the adverse reaction reports on the experimental injections were both ignored and canceled. As a result, thousands of people were unnecessarily injured or killed because of this tyranny response. The cure was truly worse than the COVID virus itself. Yet there's been no significant apology or admission of wrongdoing by these organizations, many of whom profited immensely by the mandated policies. All of these organizations were complicit also in a massive effort to dismiss and deny the tremendous effectiveness of ivermectin, leading to thousands of unnecessary more deaths and countless economic and personal loss. If you have any doubts about this, please read Dr. Pierre Corey's outstanding book, The War on Ivermectin. The mandated COVID responses were never shown to improve healthcare, and the scamdemic was about two things: menticide and fear porn. To summarize, the politicized healthcare has become the weapon of choice to take away individual liberty and freedom, to protect and preserve the liberal swamp. Our trust has been betrayed, and we're experiencing a war against the humanity. I fully support this resolution, and in the spirit of Patrick Henry, give me freedom, liberty, truth, or give me death. May God bless America and restore our freedom.
Thank you. Next, we have Christy. Corey Gus will be next on deck, please.
My name is Christy Schweiss. I'm from Wausau, and I would like to share how I and others have personally been affected by the lockdown and COVID shots. 2 years ago, my Uncle Butch had a blood clot and then a week later died in his sleep. He was in great shape and did 200 push-ups a day, working out daily. He had the COVID boosters. My mom passed a year ago in Arden Park from a heart attack. She had all the boosters, and I remember her reacting from the very first one with a breathing lung issue, almost going to the hospital, and she had a very strong constitution like her brother. She worked out and was healthy. I believe they were one of many who suffered from the shots. I have two friends in alternative health that have clients that got worse after having the shots. There were 4 people that they shared with me that all of a sudden they had stage 4 cancer, and shortly after being diagnosed, they passed. I met a lady a year ago in a grief group that told me that her husband had the shots and his cancer came back. Shortly after that, he passed. She said it was from the booster. I met a young activist last year who graduated from Wausau East High School. She told me that she was stuck at home her senior year, and it was horrible. What saddened me was when she told me that several high school students in the area committed suicide during that time. Kids need interaction with each other, with others. We all do. It's a crime that this happened, and it's also a crime to not let loved ones come and see their elderly parent in a nursing home with some dying alone. That should never have happened. Lastly, what about all the people during the shutdown stuck in their homes that are moldy, getting sick with time, and don't know why? That was my daughter, Julie. She lived in a moldy apartment and was sensitive to mold. How do I know? After she died in her apartment 2.5 years ago, I had her blood tested and her apartment. Did you know 50% of all buildings have a mold problem and 25% of the population are very sensitive to it? You cannot heal or have good health when you are in that kind of environment day after day. So many people were afraid and were at home more. This is probably something that most would not think about, but it was an unfortunate thing for my daughter and others who lived in mold to have to be in their home a lot during this lockdown. So many people have been hurt from this pandemic, shots and masks. If we all stand up to
30
this
seconds.
and say no, we can prevail. God is in our corner. Thank you.
Thank you. Corey, Gus. Next will be Kelly Grimshield.
My name is Corey Gus, and I live in the town of Maine, village of Maine. Okay, we still call it town of Maine. Okay, so I support this resolution, and this is why. First of all, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, it was used as a fear tactic to gain control over the population. I will admit that when it first began, I too was afraid. When my small business was forced to close its doors, I complied. I wore a mask, just as we were told to. I knew people who had contracted COVID and were fine. I knew people who had relatives who died from COVID because they had severe underlying health issues. However, as time went on, I began to realize that something was wrong. I began to conduct my own research and discovered that we were all being lied to. I am not here to tell you that COVID-19 did not change our lives, because it did, yet not in the way that the government officials intended. As of September 9th, 2023, 1,006,337 adverse reactions have been reported to the VAERS site. According to reports, this number is approximately 10% of the actual adverse events created by the COVID-19 vaccine. This is due to the fact that the doctors and nurses in our healthcare system have been instructed not to report these issues. Dr. Peter McCullough, the top cardiologist in the world, has reported that out of all the deaths linked to COVID-19, 86% of these the vaccine, 86% of these deaths have no scientific explanation other than receiving the vaccine. I have known quite a few people who have died from this vaccine. All but one of them were under 50. One ran marathons. Within 2 weeks of receiving the vaccine, he died of a heart attack in his sleep. Does this sound familiar? If you watch the mainstream media, probably not. This is happening all over the world. Young, healthy athletes are dropping dead. My adopted mother, who I begged not to get the shot, died over a year ago because of this vaccine. People who went to get their shot reported when they opened the disclaimer portion, it was blank. This is in direct violation of Nuremberg codes. What about masks? They protect us, right? No. We were told that if we wore
30 seconds.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I guess I can't read that. By preventing this resolution from passing, you will be violating your oath of office, which is to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America and the God-given rights of her sovereign people. No person who holds a position of governing the people of which they were elected should ever have to be reminded of this fact. It is unconstitutional.
Time. Thank you. Kelly. Then Steve Osnes is next.
Thank you. My name's Kelly Grimshed, and I am from Mosinee. Our government's job is to protect us from tyrannical, over-governing measures. When the last mandates came through, you caused people's small businesses to literally forever die due to scaring people into what should not have been, especially since medical choice should be left to the individual. Some fell for the lie that was being put out to try to manipulate us all. Some of us never complied, knowing that our rights were being trampled on. And knowing how viruses work, they must die, but a mask is not the answer, as a virus passes through a mask, which is now common knowledge. We are at a pivotal, important time in history. If we bow down just a little with a mandate on wearing masks or forcing vaccines to hold jobs, we are headed down the slippery slope of tyrannical governing. And we'll slowly lose our God-blessed rights to be free in each person's choices, whether it be to wear a mask or not to wear a mask, to get a vaccine or not to get a vaccine, or dare I say, the possibility to even worship God the way we choose. If we don't stand at saying yes to this resolution, the slope of tyranny falls fast if you give into a little. Be careful the way you govern the people, no matter which side you stand on. Stand for choice for your constituents. Sign this resolution, yes to never mandate. Let your constituents exercise their freedoms. These past couple of years have really brought out the true colors of Americans. It showed who the freedom-loving people are, and it showed also who the power-hungry tyrants are. Which one are you? Thank you.
Thank you. We have Steve Osnes. Next, Melinda DeGeyer. If she's not here, I'll just move on. Come back.
Good evening, Chair, board members. My name's Steve Osnes, Lincoln County. Currently, this last Tuesday, Lincoln County, myself, wrote the resolution with the help of Stacy Morash to overturn the COVID mandates, what you guys are doing tonight. I come to you tonight in complete support of this resolution. I'd like to say the biggest thank you to Stacy providing me with the information that was provided to present Lincoln County to pass a resolution. Stacy, your district should be proud and Marathon County should be proud. What you did for Marathon County in bringing this resolution will never be forgotten, and we thank you. It's been 3 years since the first public declaration of this hype COVID pandemic in 2019-2020. Had anything the experts professed to have been true by the nature of the virus, thereby qualifying as the international health emergency, we should have seen our friends, neighbors dropping like flies, especially now, the non-conforming magnitude of this so-called non-compliance unvaxxed. But instead, what do we see? The more time elapses, the more digging that takes place, the more unethical the entire matter becomes. From government overreach, unconstitutionality of healthcare mandates, increased sickness brought on not by COVID, but rather than stress related to the consequences of the compliance versus non-compliance. And many relationships have been severely damaged or destroyed based on previous danger. We are now seeing more vaccine injuries take place and people dying suddenly, myocarditis, the spikes in cancer, and more the new normal simply because some of us responded out in fear rather than reason. Small businesses and employers are still seeing the impact, whether it be involved of their business closing, inability to hire workers willing to subject themselves to unproven science, or for the sake of a paycheck, even now. Employees who refuse to return to work because they prefer working from home. There can be no denying the economic impact of these mandates have had on every community. All while we are learning that the doctors and hospitals were incentivized to push the CDC recommendation protocols, while universities and big pharma profited from mandated vaccines
30 seconds.
and their treatment and coincidentally adverse event escalation. I'll leave you with this. As Thomas Jefferson famously stated, those who would trade safety for freedom deserve neither. He also said there is no justification for taking away individuals' freedom in guise of public safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Melinda DeGuyer. Next would be Joanne Egelkraut.
Hi.
Hi.
Do I have to say where I live, or?
Just a municipality, town, county, or town.
I'm in District 34.
That's-
Melinda DeGear, okay. So I'm here today because I'd like for you to vote in favor of the no mandates resolution that passed on the HHS committee. Mandates were terrible in all regards, and here's a glimpse of what went on around me. The masks didn't stop the virus, as we now know from the Cochrane Review, but they caused disease in many people. I know a girl at work who's 27 years old, and she developed blood clots in her lungs, and the doctors were looking for all sorts of things wrong with her, but their final conclusion was that it was because she was wearing a mask. And rather than write her a medical exemption for mask wearing, they put her on blood thinners. She was 27 years old. I cannot wear a mask, and I got a medical exemption from my doctor. And I had people constantly insult me at stores because they wanted to let me know that me not wearing a mask was terrible and that I should leave. Vaccine was later mandated, and this caused people to lose their jobs. It put a wedge between family members, and for what? For no good reason, because we found out that it did not stop transmission or infection, and Pfizer itself admitted that they never tested it if it would stop transmission, because in their words, we were moving at the speed of science. Stay-at-home orders and lockdowns were put in place, and my family and I were forced to stay at home, and my kids couldn't go to school. At the time, my 13-year-old daughter said, "I wish God would take my life." Let that sink in. That was my 13-year-old child. She wanted to die. This is not okay. You mess with my kids' desire to live. Staying at home did not help anyone. The hospitals were not overrun with COVID, and there were untold numbers of suicide deaths during the lockdowns, and we know that. We can never repeat what took place during COVID. It was a terrible disaster, not because of COVID, but because of how our health agencies handled it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Joanne Egelkraut. And then next will be Randall Dietert.
Chairman Gibbs, thank you so much for your time this evening. I'm not going to be giving any scientific data or statistics or anything like that. I'm speaking from my heart for my personal experience with the previous COVID protocols, the effect it had on myself and on my family. First of all, I lost my job, my livelihood to those protocols. I worked for Aspirus, and they implemented their mandatory testing and or vaccine protocols, and I submitted a religious exemption. They denied that, and I ultimately lost my job. Granted, or I should say, just so you know, I worked 100% at home, and I live all by myself. I was no threat to anyone, but I got let go anyway, because I wouldn't go into a clinic and get tested, which was ridiculous, instead of staying home in the safety of my living room. My daughter has been severely affected. In fact, this time last year, I thought she was going to commit suicide. She has a pre-existing condition of anxiety and panic disorder, and this COVID protocol totally exacerbated that. She is now, still 3 years later, to this day, afraid to go into a store. She can't go to church. She can't work. She's a single mother of 4 children with no way to support herself because her anxiety and panic over this has just overtaken her. She lives in fear. My oldest sister felt forced to get this vaccine to help do the right thing for everybody, So she did get the vaccine. Shortly thereafter, she died from blood clots. My grandchildren's education has been severely affected. My oldest granddaughter graduated last year. She was a strong B student. She barely graduated. She fell so far behind. My other granddaughter, who started kindergarten in 2020, is 3 years later still struggling to catch up, to be reading at her grade level, and to be understanding math as she should. I beg of you,
30 seconds.
please support this resolution. We have all been forced to endure great traumatic results from the previous protocols. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Randall Dietert is next. Renee Radcliffe will follow.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Marathon County Board. My name is Randall Dietert. I'm with the town of Scott in Lincoln County, where I am a board member. I'm also a county board member in Lincoln County. But that's not why I'm here tonight. I want to share with you tonight how this has affected my family. Early on in the scamdemic, my mother was hospitalized, and she was in her 80s. Really, they scared her so badly, and being all alone with no one able to be there with her, she really got sicker while she was in the hospital, and she did have some modalities, and she was very, very old and quite sick. We couldn't get them to release her to come home, and my mother would just cry, and she was definitely getting more sick in the hospital. We did find a way to get her released. We had to do that by putting her on hospice. We got her home, and within 3 or 4 weeks, she was not just doing better, she had been doing better than she was for a couple years prior. We had some outside healthcare people help us to try to determine some of the underlying issues, and it greatly helped my mother. But she still took that to heart of what she went through in the hospital all alone with no one able to be there. The second item that I would like to share with you is a sibling of mine, and he was also jabbed. I was given a call a number of months ago that my sibling was in the hospital in the emergency room having a heart attack. So I went to the hospital, and although he was doing okay, his chest hurt terribly and his vitals weren't very good. They appeared to be helping him. I needed to go home, so I did. Within an hour, he called, barely able to talk to me. They still had not come up to help him. He had been there almost 12 hours, and all they were doing was giving him palliative care. At that point, I went to his side, and I made it well known of what his vitals were and what I thought their treatment was becoming. I was told that he was not ill enough to take a helicopter to a different hospital, which I think is horrible, but these are the things that happen, okay, in this type of situation, and that's why I support this.
30 seconds, please.
Thank you. So he is diagnosed with myopericarditis, and then the third one I will share with you is, excuse me, I have another sibling last week had a heart attack. And that sibling also has received the shot and boosters. And this, excuse me, this seems to be something that's happening rampant now in our society for those that have had the shot. Thank you.
Thank you. We next have Renee Radcliffe, followed by Jan Gartman.
Renee Radcliffe, Town of Weston. Mr. Chairman, I am speaking today in favor of this resolution. I spoke also at the Health Services Committee meeting, which was a couple of weeks ago, also in favor of this. And I totally agree with everyone who has spoken before me. A couple of the things, there were a couple of people who spoke in opposition to this resolution at that Health Services Committee meeting. And the reasons for their opposition made me think, well, it's even a bigger reason to support this resolution. One of the things that, and I believe it was a county supervisor, said that these mandates are part of the toolbox that we have in order to address issues like this in the future. In my opinion, using mandates for masks, vaccines, lockdowns is like using a sledgehammer to kill a fly in your kitchen window. It was over, there is a virus, people were sick, there was a threat, but the whole response to this from the beginning has been insane. I wish I would have kept notes when this first started of all the things that I saw that just don't make sense. Caution tape around the playground at the playground across from my house. I also remember there being talk about the health officer not being able to enforce people who are contact trace who are positive with the COVID. And at that time, I believe it was discussed at the county board. I called my supervisor because I did not feel that the health officer in the health department should have the authority to put ankle bracelets on people. Those were things that were discussed at that time. There was so much stuff that was done that no one thought about or questioned. Do masks work? Probably in a sterile surgical suite, or in a hospital setting where someone is coughing and sneezing and is sick. Do they work on kindergartners, first graders, second graders who are at school playing outside? I don't think so. And we are being told by some people that we shouldn't question that. The health authorities know it's safe, we should just listen to what they tell us. Wear the mask, get the shot, don't question that it's only been out for 2 years. There's no long-term research on giving it to anyone, much less recommending it for children and adolescents. So for those
30
reasons,
seconds.
I believe that the county board should support this resolution and not allow mandates to happen like this in the future that affect businesses and the livelihoods of people in addition to their health. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jan Gartman, followed by Heidi Seaman?
Yes. Good evening. I'm Jan Gartman, Rothschild, Wisconsin, formerly from Lincoln County, so thank you, Lincoln County guys, for coming up here. I want to say I do support this resolution going forward. This whole COVID protocol, the mandates, the masking mandates, everything has been one big worldwide social experiment. First of all, 2 basic questions. People claim the mask is so good and it catches these viruses. Well, first off, that's not true. Here's a very enlarged picture. This outer circle is the pore size of your disposable or cloth mask. This tiny white dot down there is actually 6 times larger than the COVID virus, so it gets through the mask. The science is all over. It's everywhere. I've got oodles of it. I'm not going to even go over it. I don't even care because that's not what this is about. One question you need to ask is if these masks caught the virus, like people think they do, why hasn't there been not one single biohazard disposable waste container anywhere? Not in any county building, not outside of it, not outside of any hospital, not outside of any business, anywhere. Not one biohazard. These masks are laying around. So we know there's no viruses being caught up in these masks that people are so worried about because there'd be biohazard collection sites for these, and there is none. In the United States, we had a 6-foot distance, little stickers all over at the stores, 6 feet apart. Where's the science for that? In Europe, it was 5 feet. In some other countries, it was 3 feet. Who came up with 6 feet? Where's the science? Nobody talks about that. They have all this pseudoscience on these masks saying they work, but they don't address the biohazard waste that there was not one single, nobody can say there's a single biohazard collection receptacle anywhere in Wisconsin, in Marathon County, in Wausau, anywhere. And what is the 6 feet? Why in some countries do you not get COVID if you're only 5 feet? And we're 6 feet. So like I said to begin with, this is a social experiment. I have 2 things quickly I want to play. Well, actually, I don't know if I have time. I'll play this one. And I might not have it on here. Let me go back.
30 seconds.
Yeah. Let's see. Here's George Soros himself. Let me turn this up. If you're familiar with him.
COVID-19 also helped legitimize instruments of control. COVID-19 also helped legitimize instruments of control. COVID-19.
You got it? You got to see who he is and who his father was. Thank you. Please.
Thank you.
Do the American thing and protect us.
Thank you. Heidi Seaman, followed by Christopher Woods.
Thank you, folks, for your time. I'm going to make it quick. There's beautiful people here who have let out their hearts on everything with COVID. We've all experienced undeniable problems and having loved ones taken away from us and not being able to see them in nursing homes and that. It was horrible. But I want to remind you folks of something that came from one of our former presidents, President Ronald Reagan, in 1964. He had a speech called A Time for Choosing. So I'm going to read just a portion of that. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. They knew that governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people. And they know when a government sets out to do it, it must use force and coercion to achieve its purpose. They also knew, those founding fathers, that outside of its legitimate functions, government does nothing as well or as economically as the private sector of the economy. Those who would trade our freedom for the soup kitchen of the welfare state have told us they have a utopian solution of peace without victory. They call their policy accommodation. And they say if we only avoid any direct confrontation with the enemy, he'll forget his evil ways and learn to love us. All who oppose them are indicated as a person who urges war. They say we offer simple answers to complex problems. Well, perhaps there is a simple answer. Not an easy answer, but simple. If you and I have the courage to tell our elected officials that we want our national policy based on what we know in our hearts is morally right. Admittedly, there's a risk in any course we follow other than this, but every lesson of history tells us the greater risk lies in appeasement. And this is the spectator our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face. That their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives us no choice between peace and war, only between fight and surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we'll have to face the final demand, the ultimatum. And what then? What will our answer be? And someday, when the time comes to deliver the final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because by that time, we'll have been weakened from within spiritually, morally, and economically. Our nation is on the brink of losing its freedoms. We have to stand and fight and say, no more mandates. We have the right, our God-given right, who has given us the right for our freedoms. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Woods, followed by Jason Jones.
Hello, Kurt Gibbs and Company. Thank you so much for allowing us to speak today. I just want to say that I do support this resolution, and I thank y'all so much because I'm sure that y'all will do what's right and make the right decision today. As there are many eyes watching, a lot of people care about what's happening, and there's a lot of people at home that care, that are afraid to speak their mind because of being shunned, shamed, attempted to be silenced, as you hear all the time. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of guts to fight for the people when they depend on you. And so when you're doing it in the adversity of people who listen to the hypno box, who want to sit there and think it's okay to shame, which shame is a great tool, However, they're using it in an improper way against us because what they believe is not accurate, unfortunately. So it takes your strength and your courage. What you do every day, the constant persistence to fight and to put your efforts towards the people, understandably is taxing and draining. It drains your energy. It can be morally depleting. You might constantly question, should you continue? And I want to remind you that you absolutely should. You are the divine intervention put here with purpose. You are put in the position that you're put in so that you can fight for the people. God gave you this position. You're not put here to consume, as they call you consumers. You're not put here to be experimented on. You are put here to build a better and brighter future for the people. Everyone loves what you're doing when it comes to fighting for them. They thank you so very much, and they support you even if they're not here. What you're doing will always be remembered because it could have easily gone the other way. It could have easily gone towards constant fear and constant control, and if it wasn't for what you were willing to do and what you're still willing to do, then we would be heading in the other direction. The future is bright. Let me go ahead and remind you, the future is bright. The future that you're fighting for and building is bright. So I know it seems like you're fighting for naught and that everything's going to slowly collapse in on itself, but you are building a better and brighter future for the people. I know that you're going to vote for the resolution. I know that you're not going to give up. Thank you so much for what you're doing, County Board, and doing what's right, because a lot of people want to try to shame you, and you won't have it. You will not step down. You will not comply.
30 seconds.
You will not back down. God bless. Thank y'all so much. Jesus loves y'all, just to let you know. And yes, it's Israel. Israel's behind it. Christopher Wood, Wassa. I always forget that part.
Jason Jones is next, followed by Cindy Russell.
My name is Jason Jones, Chair, Mosinee, Wisconsin. I am a flag-loving, God-fearing American, and I would like to say that I'm 53. I'm the youngest guy on my block. I've watched my neighbors live in fear of the mask. Am I going to get this? We've done 6 feet. We've done 8 feet. They've worn 2 masks. They've worn 3 masks. I watch people driving in a car by themselves with a mask. I'm going, when is this going to stop? And it's you, our elected officials, that need to bring this to a stop once and for all. I support our police. I support our national security, our armed forces. I am asking you, as a constituent of Marathon County, stop it. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Cindy Russell, followed by Jim Russell. Cindy Russell's next, please.
Good evening. We were told that
Cindy, where are you from, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Cindy Russell, Village of Weston.
Thank you.
We were told that if we wore a mask, we would not get COVID. That was a lie. Forcing a population to wear a mask restricts our individual freedom, causes us to contaminate our own bodies by breathing in carbon dioxide and the germs that reside in our mouths, while also causing respiratory difficulties and facial skin lesions. All this for something that does not work. This is yet another form of control of the masses. And I am in support of this resolution, and I pray that you'll find it in your hearts to protect the American people by voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jim Russell, please, followed by Nancy Ewan.
Jim Russell, Village of Weston, Wisconsin. I think what we've heard here tonight goes far beyond just the simple mask. Some of these stories are sad, and we've all heard these stories. We've heard them on the news, and we've got a lot of people here that have spoken of these things. This is a social experiment. It's designed to see how compliant they can make Americans to be. Just as Fauci said, Americans have always had a spirit of liberty, but now it's time to do what they're told. We know the masks don't work. Anything where you've got gaps in the side, there's no ceiling. I wore a gas mask. If you've got a side, if you're wearing whiskers, a gas mask doesn't work, and it covers your face far more completely than a mask does. Also, if people want to wear a mask, they're free to wear a mask, but I'm in favor of the resolution of no mandates. If they feel they're not being protected, if they got their mask on, then they're protected, I guess. That's all I have.
Thank you. Nancy Ewan, followed by Sandy Bausch.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak.
Nancy, where are you from, please? Sorry.
Nancy Ewan, Athens, Wisconsin, town of Johnson.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to say that I appreciate what everyone is doing, but I'd like you to keep in mind that you do work for the people. We are here because we are concerned about our freedoms. I worked in the school district of Athens for 26 years. I worked with the 4-year-old program. Every day, those kids came with masks, be it if it were the blue mask, the simple masks that you find in the hospitals or clinics where you go into, or homemade masks. I can't tell you and describe how those children, those masks, how the mucus that would build up. Now, you can't tell me that that is good for those children. Plus, the masks also inhibited their conversations with other students. So you saw them sitting at their desks with these masks on and not being able to speak or see their facial expressions. And that is so important for young developing minds to be able to communicate by facial, by their words. Now, I had a niece, 35, not even 30, I think she was 34 years old, that she was required to get the shot through her employment. She didn't want to, but she had to. She got the shot, and a month later had a stroke. Thank God that they were able to give her the medicine to prevent the stroke from becoming any worse. So she is happily now recovered. But I have lost a brother.
30 seconds.
Not the COVID, but he had sepsis. And we weren't allowed to go and see him in the hospital. No one was, and he died alone. What I'm trying to say is let the people decide, let the parents decide if their kids should be vaccinated or wear a mask. And if you're going to wear a mask, my sister who's a doctor, the KN95, which still does not guarantee.
Nancy, please. Time.
Thank you.
Sandy Bausch, please, followed by Clint Roush.
Hi, good evening. I'm Sandy Bausch from Wausau, and I echo the sentiments of many of the people that stood up here before me. I'd just like to say I fully support the resolution, and I believe individuals should be in charge of their healthcare decisions and not our government. Marathon County residents should be free to choose whether they want to wear a mask or not, whether they want to get a vaccine or not. I ask that the county board please vote in support of this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Final speaker is Clint Roush.
Clint Roosh, Wausau, Wisconsin. I can't even believe that we're up here and have to do this. It bothers me that people can't see the big picture of what's really going on. I mean, if you look at all the evidence, all the lies, how many lies do you need to be told before you question the truth, what they're telling you? People have already said it before, and I'm glad they said it before me. I wrote some stuff down here to kind of look at the big picture. For 20 years, I've been watching this shit go on. I've been watching the New World Order, the globalization, all the elites and what they're doing and how they're trying to control us. But the vaccine mandate is a big one for me. I will not comply. I did not comply. I will not comply. I'll never comply. In the early 1900s, Rockefeller controlled 90% of the petroleum refineries in the United States. At the same time, the science world was discovering petrochemicals and the ability to create a variety of compounds from oil. These compounds included synthetic versions of essential vitamins and medications. Rockefeller saw this as an opportunity. Synthetic compounds could be patented, and he could monopolize on that market also. In order to do that, he moved forward with a plan to eliminate competition, natural and holistic medicine. He went to Congress in 1910 with a report that concluded that the natural healing modalities were unscientific quackery. I'd like to remind you the things that our bodies are made of. The report called for standardization of medical education whereby only the AMA would be allowed to grant medical school licensure in the U.S. Incredibly, allopathic medicine became the standard, and natural and homeopathic modalities were vilified. Allopathic modality at the time included bloodletting, barbaric surgery, and the injection of heavy toxic metals to displace disease. Rockefeller then teamed up with Carnegie and started funding medical schools on the strict condition that they only taught allopathic medicine. With the motive of power and greed, they systematically dismantled the previous curricula, removing any mention of the healing power of herbs and other natural treatments. Teaching on diet and other natural, non-drug treatments were completely removed from medical programs. And this is the way
30
it is
seconds.
today. After removing the traditional medical schools, Rockefeller secured his monopoly by launching a smear campaign against his competitors. Homeopathy and natural medicine were discredited and demonized through newspapers and other media at the time. To this day, Western medicine is the process of prescribing patented drugs. Sound familiar?
5 seconds.
I will not comply. I won't ever comply. I will not take your shots. I will not get on your train
Thank
or your
you.
bus.
Thank you.
I will
Clint.
not.
Thank you, please. Thank you. I thank everyone for your comments, and we will move on to item number 8 on the agenda, and that is education, presentation, and reports by standing committee chairpersons or designees. Any reports by standing committee chairpersons or designees? Okay, we'll move. Supervisor Robinson, please.
Just a reminder that on Tuesday, we will have a joint county board and human resources, finance and property committee to receive the administrator's budget, and the summary document will be provided to you at that time. One of the things we'll be talking about at our committee meeting earlier that day is the timeline. We're hoping to engage the committees in that process, so we will have an outline of timelines for your participation next Tuesday evening.
Any other committee chairs or designees? Okay, we'll move on to item number 9, review and discuss the Tuesday meeting agenda items. Item 9A, appointments to item 9A1, Highway Safety Commission, Todd True and Angela Hansen.
Upon approval of the board, appointing Todd True as a citizen member and Angela Hansen as a citizen member to fill 2 vacant positions for terms to expire at the April 2024 organizational meeting.
Any questions? Okay, down to ordinances. Item 9B1, Town of Brighton rezone, Ryan and Gordon Lynn, ordinance 0-32-23. Any questions on that zoning rezone? Okay, we'll move on to item 9B3, amendments to Chapter 17 of the Marathon County General Code, ordinance 0-34-23. I'll go back and pick up the other one. Again, any questions on the amendment to Chapter 17 of the Marathon County General Code, 34-23? Okay, we'll go back and pick up the one that I inadvertently skipped. Item 9B2, Town of Spencer rezone, Larry and Patricia Lang, ordinance 0-33-23. All right, moving on to item 9B4, speed zone reduction on County Road K, ordinance 0-35-23. Any questions? Supervisor Wilhelm.
What section of County Road K is going to be zoned? What section of County Road K is going to be reduced in speed?
I'll have the Corp Counsel address that.
Sure. The resolution indicates it is beginning at the intersection of K and Cassidy Drive, North 20th Avenue, for a distance of 3.19 miles, or a point ending 1,300 feet north of Hillcrest Drive. I don't know if that helps you, but that's what the resolution says.
Any other questions? Supervisor Marshall, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Was that requested by citizens or reducing the speed limit requested by a supervisor? What's the origin, if you may?
We'll have the Vice Chair of the Infrastructure Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's actually in the resolution as well. There was a traffic and engineering investigation that was on the highway, so it was through the highway department.
Supervisor Covelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also, is that where the roundabout's going around the main school? And
Yes.
I believe that's part of the reason that speed has been reduced, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Okay, we'll get to item 9C, resolutions. Item 9C1 from the Health and Human Services Committee. Item 9C1A, a resolution opposing opposition to COVID-19 mandates. Resolution 50-23. Supervisor Marash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank everyone for coming and expressing their feelings and their experiences with what they went through with the COVID-19. I bring this resolution forward to the board today because there have been clear signs that we may be headed down a path of mandates, much like we experienced a couple of years ago. Several colleges and healthcare institutions have re-implemented mask mandates or recommendations, and I believe it's paramount to communicate our county is not willing to participate in the same failed policies that were forced upon us during the pandemic.
We recite the Pledge of Allegiance before every full board meeting and standing committee meeting, the section stating, "One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all," is not one I take lightly, and during our moment of silence, I ask God for discernment. As county board members, we all took a sworn oath to support the United States Constitution as well as the state of Wisconsin Constitution. Both of these documents make it abundantly clear that citizens' rights shall not be infringed upon. As stated in the 14th Amendment, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution, quote, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state where they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws," end quote. Furthermore, the Wisconsin Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, the Declaration of Rights states, quote, "All people are born equally free and independent and have certain inherent rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments are instituted, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed," end quote. Deriving their powers from the consent of the governed was completely ignored and cast aside during the pandemic with the excuse of an emergency. A skillfully crafted and executed fear campaign was unleashed on the global population in order to get the masses to comply, and it was no different here. Tactics including coercion, enticement, and harassment were used to bully citizens into compliance, and those who chose not to participate were treated as second-class citizens. The mandates imposed on companies with 100 or more employees forced some of our residents to have to choose between their jobs and the jab, as we heard earlier tonight. Friends of mine who were with companies for decades were forced to vacate their positions and figure out another way to make a living. And let's not forget the healthcare workers who were heralded as heroes on the onset of the pandemic and vilified later when they would not be coerced. During the pandemic, we were told to stay home for 2 weeks to stop the spread. That turned into months, which destroyed businesses and livelihoods and the brave entrepreneurs in our county. Owning and operating your business is no small feat, and if economic development is truly one of our county's goals, we need to support them every way possible, and that includes helping them stay open. Our Entrepreneurial Center is currently working with several burgeoning businesses, and supporting this resolution would send a message that this county has their best interests as a priority. Objective 3.3 in our strategic plan is to, quote, "ensure every child makes it to adulthood with health, stability, education, and growth opportunities," end quote. As documented in the 2022 annual report by the Marathon County Health Department, published in May 2023, 29% of high school students and 27% of middle school students felt so sad or hopeless every day for 2 or more weeks in a row that they stopped doing some usual activities. 45% of high school students and 48% of middle school students reported feeling very anxious, nervous, tense, or scared, like something bad was about to happen. This report also stated that students that experience significant problems with anxiety are 10 times more likely to report seriously considering suicide. One of our school districts has suffered the loss of 4 students to suicide in the past couple of years. So if you think school closures did not negatively affect the well-being of the young people in our county because correlation is not causation, I urge you to reach out to the parents in our community so you can hear firsthand how their children have suffered. These school closures, ineffective online learning, masking, and lack of socialization have caused a decline in normal childhood development. An estimated 24.2 million children in the U.S. fell behind in their learning by almost a year, and children aged 3 months to 3 years are scoring almost 2 standard deviations lower in proxy measurements of development. An article I included in the Health and Human Services packet titled, quote, 1 in 10 kids diagnosed with developmental disability, CDC says, experts blame pandemic policies and rising numbers, end quote, describes examples of the damaging effects these policies have caused, such as delays in babies' ability to crawl, walk, and talk. No wonder we needed to approve 6 new positions for the Children's Long-Term Support and Comprehensive Community Services programs. Much has been inflicted upon our global society due to the pandemic, and we certainly are not out of the woods. The WHO is currently working on a new international pandemic treaty with international health regulations, IHRs, that will provide an overarching legal framework that defines countries' rights and obligations in handling public health events and emergencies that have the potential to cross borders. The IHRs are an instrument of international law that is legally binding on 196 countries, including the 194 member states. The new WHO treaty, of which the United States plays an integral part, shifts power away from sovereign states to unelected bureaucrats at the WHO. Every change made to this treaty centralizes power to the WHO and supersedes our own Constitution. This is not hyperbole. As the U.S. Constitution, Article 6 reads, quote, "This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding," end quote. In the previous IHR, the phrase, quote, "with full respect for the dignity, human rights, and fundamental freedoms of persons," end quote, existed. However, in the updated version, that has been deleted and replaced with, quote, "the principles of equity, inclusivity, and coherence," end quote. Under the proposed WHO plan, pandemics not be limited to infectious diseases and can include things like climate change. This treaty also dictates vaccine development, testing only for production of antibodies, not whether or not it prevents infection or transmission. In addition, the WHO will have the power to enforce which drugs we may use and which will be prohibited, and also requires media to monitor misinformation and impose censorship so that only the WHO's public health narrative be conveyed to the public. If this isn't terrifying enough for you, they're also working on a global vaccine passport system that will link every person on the planet to a QR code digital ID. This system will be universal, mandatory, and transnational. This treaty is slated to be finalized in May of 2024. When this new treaty is adopted, our children and grandchildren will not have the opportunity to grow up in the same country we did. They will not have the freedom to choose what's right for them. They will be under the thumb of the WHO's Director General, who will have the single-handed power to declare a public health emergency that includes potential in addition to actual concerns. When that happens, the American dream for our children will be dead. We are at a critical point in history, and it is imperative that we stand together to send a message that we will not allow our citizens' rights to be jeopardized. This resolution is in no way, shape, or form politically motivated. The pandemic affected everyone on this planet. We all dealt with it the best way we thought possible, and we should have the right to continue to make decisions for ourselves, not be forced into compliance by people we did not elect or by the use of emergency orders. To be abundantly clear, this resolution does not take away your right to wear a mask, get boosters, or stay home if those are tools you feel will keep you safe and healthy. In closing, I want to bring your attention to our overarching goal to be the safest, healthiest, and most prosperous county in Wisconsin. In order to do that, we need to support the health care rights and freedoms of our citizens, and I ask you to please support this resolution. Thank you.
So, please stop. Supervisor Sandalski, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I first would like to thank the supervisors who were pivotal in bringing this resolution to the board. On April 19th of 2022, each and every one of us, of the 38 supervisors in Marathon County, took an oath to uphold the Constitution and protect the unalienable rights of the people we serve. They are the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We cannot take this oath lightly. Now let's rewind back to 2022. Those very unalienable rights were under attack within our county and the citizens of the entire nation. Citizens' livelihoods were destroyed when the businesses were shut down. Many lost small businesses and everything they owned because they were forced against their rights to shut down. Also, the county has a vested interest in this too. When businesses shut down, you lose a lot of tax revenue. So there's that one too. Employees were enforced to take experimental vaccinations and to wear masks. Even manufacturers stay right on the box that they will not protect or reduce the spread of COVID or any virus in order to keep their job. Schools were shut down and children were forced to wear masks, desk barriers, etc., which led to a drastic increase in mental health cases among children and teenagers. And we also saw a massive decrease in reading and math scores as well. I got an article related to that too here. Patients in hospitals and nursing homes were not allowed to see their loved ones, as these people always stated. Like, all this stuff was already kind of said, but I'm going to continue on here. Our First Amendment to our U.S. Constitution was also under attack as churches were forced to close their doors. I have this handy little pocket Constitution. I have this handy little pocket Constitution we all swore an oath to. I will recite the First Amendment for you. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech, press, or the right for people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. Everyone has their views on these vaccines, mass lockdowns, quarantines, COVID, and everything that surrounds it. You have the very right to wear a mask, take a vaccine, or shut down your business, or isolate yourself. At the same time, all citizens of Marathon County also have the right to not partake in these activities. This no mandates resolution is exactly that. It protects those very rights no matter how you feel. The question I have to my fellow supervisors is, are you going to vote yes on this resolution and uphold your oath to the Constitution and protect the unalienable rights of the citizens we serve here in Marathon County, the very rights, liberties, and freedoms that many men and women fought, bled, and died for? I hope we can all come together as a board here and do right by the people we serve here. And don't forget to our constituents that we're all here watching. They're watching exactly how you vote on this resolution, because April is just around the corner. Thank you.
Supervisor Wilhelm, please.
I am going to support this resolution. I was, before when the COVID vaccines came out, I actually have a high risk of blood clots. And when the reports started coming out of people getting blood clots from the vaccines, I immediately decided that I would not get it because of my risk. And luckily my employer did not force us to get vaccinated. And if they would have, I would have walked off the job because I'd take my health over my livelihood any day. And I believe that it is our place to make sure that people can make a personal decision on if they want to be vaccinated or have a mask. It is their choice. It's not the government's choice to tell them that they need to do this. That's all I'd say.
Supervisor Robinson, please.
Thank you. I have two questions for the Corporation Council. Is there currently any state statute or county ordinance that grants to Marathon County the authority to impose mandates, vaccination requirements, or forced isolation?
In short, no. At this time, the county doesn't have any statutory authority to mandate those items. We also we haven't adopted a local communicable disease ordinance. There are certain state laws related to communicable diseases, typically like things like tuberculosis that require a specific court process for forced isolation, but nothing specific to what you asked about.
So the second question is, if this resolution is adopted, what changes in Marathon County?
I don't think there are any changes in the county. I think, in effect, this is a declaration to other government entities. It doesn't have the force of law to overturn anything, but it's a statement and declaration about these policy positions. Because the county doesn't have the statutory authority granted by the state to act in this area, except by expressing its position on policy to, for instance, as the resolution calls for, the Department of Health Services.
Supervisor Shafinsky, please.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, what we're looking at here, this comes back as COVID. It looks like a medical issue, and to a large extent it is, but that's not the entire picture here. What really became very, very clear very early in the response to the pandemic is this became a question of freedom, individual rights, versus tyranny. Tyranny at the state level, tyranny at the federal level, tyranny at the local level. And this particular resolution is a message to the state government of Wisconsin that the residents of Marathon County are going to very firmly and very loudly, but very politely, say no. We will not go there, we will not comply, and we will not submit to the type of tyranny that was imposed by the state. So that really is what we're voting on here. In this case, the tyranny was cloaked in medical advice, but it really becomes a matter of freedom versus tyranny. For that reason, I'll leave that go.
Supervisor Ritter, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 100% of my constituents that contacted me about this adamantly supported this resolution. This is not about what's enforceable. This is not about if masks work or don't work. This is about the people making a statement. If you want to wear a mask, there's no problems with it. You're safe. You feel safe. If I don't want to wear a mask, you're still safe if you're wearing yours. This is about my choice. It's my body, my choice.
Supervisor Dickinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess I'm going to kind of focus it in on what we have authority over, and I would assume that this resolution would cover our Marathon County employees who are county residents. And I assume that we had COVID policies in place to mask, to send home in isolation and quarantine. I don't know what the original policy was. I don't know what version of it now exists. But I would say that whether we need to put employees into this resolution or not, because it just says Marathon County residents, I think it sends a message to our entire county and our state that we're not going to do this to our employees anymore. I would assume that they suffered, again, not knowing what the specific policies were, but I assume that many people suffered through that as well, and we have a responsibility to work with them and to honor them. And honestly, I'm embarrassed at myself because through the whole COVID time when I got on the board in 2020, not once did I ever think of the employees and how we are, I would assume, we have oversight over our employees. We have an HR finance committee, but I don't think it ever came up in any discussion. So if at a minimum, this is what this establishes, that we can protect our employees and help guide the policies to protect them, I am in complete support of this. Thank you.
Supervisor Baker, please.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. So there was a question asked just a minute ago about if there was any ordinances or statutes that allowed Marathon County to issue mandates. I would like to, on August 7th, 2020, WAOW printed a story, Marathon County developing way to report non-mask compliance. If you felt uncomfortable in a public space where masks were being worn, there'll be a tool to help soon. Marathon County is debuting a mask non-compliance reporting outlet sometime next week. While they aren't exactly sure what it looked like yet, the idea for the community to report area businesses and individuals of non-compliance. So what ordinance or statute allowed us to do that, which is in effect a mandate? If not, if there wasn't enforcement ability, then we seized enforcement ability. What statute allowed us to do that? Thank you.
I'd address the question to Corp Counsel, and if he needs prep time, I would ask him to review that and bring the answer to the supervisor's question next Tuesday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yep, I don't have an answer off the top of my head, but I can look into it, Supervisor Baker, and bring something to you and the board.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 9C, 2A, from Infrastructure Committee, the 2023 County Bridge and Culvert Aid Resolution, Resolution 51-23. Any discussion? Okay, from the public's item 9C3 from the Public Safety Committee and Human Resources and Finance and Property Committee, a resolution authorizing the expenditure of ARPA funds for Phase 2 design services for the Regional Forensic Science Center, Resolution 52-23. Any discussion? All right. We are down to item number 10, announcements and/or requests. I've got an announcement from the clerk. Please check your mailbox. There is items in your mailbox. And any others? Supervisor Marshall, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This week is Farm Safety and Health Week. And I just wanted to say I thank all those involved in the agriculture industry who produce all of our food, and ask that as you encounter more traffic on the highways for farmers trying to harvest their crops, that you be patient and also take their safety in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, just an announcement, it is also Alzheimer's Awareness Week. So it was, if you are wearing purple, you are recognized as understanding the challenges with Alzheimer's. Supervisor Boots, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. Please, go ahead.
All right. I just wanted to say that I just wanted to point out, and I don't know if everyone knew, but I think Craig would be okay with me saying this. His surgery was a success, and he's on the road to recovery. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I received that text from his wife late yesterday afternoon that the surgery went well, and he's on the road to recovery. So, again, absolutely a blessing. Thank you. Any other announcements? Okay, we are down to item number 11. Motion by Supervisor Shafinsky and seconded by Supervisor Seefeld. Any discussion? All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We stand adjourned.